Morning, everyone. This is Wesley Hudson, Chairman of Prosperity and Livability Committee. I'd like to call us to order this morning. In chambers is all four members of the committee, Councilmember Jefferson, Councilmember Peters, and Councilmember Holmes. We have three items this morning. Our first item is a presentation on Hillcrest Place at North Main Street. And Greg Venable, I see, is coming up to the podium.
Yep. Just say that you got it. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the City Council. I'd like to briefly touch on, if you recall, we discussed this item at the last meeting, so I just want to give a brief summary of what we discussed at that meeting. As you guys are aware, Killenly Horn and Associates provided a list of potential interim improvements that we could install before the larger study is done for that corridor. Some of the recommendations that came out of that and what we would recommend from the staff level was to enhance roadway lighting at a cost of $5,000 and enhance the existing signals that are out there, the signs, the RRFB with double posted signs. And what that means is currently they're posted on one side, so if you're going northbound, it's just on the northbound side, so you double post on either side. That would be at a cost of approximately $10,000 to $25,000. And then a concrete refuge island in the middle with detectable warning surfaces for the crossings and stuff like that. That would be at a cost of about $15,000. So what we discussed last time and what we would recommend was an estimated total cost of $45,000. At that time, the committee recommended that we investigate the possible installation of a signal or a high-intensity activated crosswalk or a full signal. So what we could refer to as a hawk signal. So that's what we talked about before with the push button for an actual red light that would stop traffic there. So we'll get into more of that discussion here in just a minute. So the hawk signal, as we discussed, DOT does not like that signal installation at this location. We can touch on that. There's some opportunities that we can look at to try to get or to gain DOT's approval in trying to install a hawk signal there. The issues are it's too close to Hillcrest Place intersection, so people making the right turn will not, there's nothing to hold them from if there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. Like we talked about right turning vehicle conflicts, and then the modification for that would be to close Hillcrest Place to put that in. So let's talk about the street, the Main Street Hillcrest Court or Hillcrest Place signal. Again, the signal must be approved by NCDOT. It would require modification or removal of the brown truck driveway, so we'd have to work with the private property owners in that location to combine their driveways so that the intersection will work appropriately. We'd have to mill and repave the entire intersection. So this is just my artwork here on the intersection, potentially what it would look like. So you have the crosswalks there, you'd have the stop bars, the high intensity crosswalk at all the locations. What you see in red there, those are your potential location for mast arms. Again, you see that driveway, and we could work, that's just a rendering, so the exact location of that driveway. So there's two driveways there now that go into the brown truck parking, so you'd have to eliminate that and redo their parking to allow just one driveway at that location. Estimated completion time is 9 to 10 months if we start that today. And the Main Street study, which is currently underway, its scheduled completion time is about the same time. And the cost. So the current estimate, I've got those circled there in yellow. If we did most of the work out there, if our crews did the signal installation and we did the design in-house, about $261,000. If we had to contract that out, if our guys were too busy to do it, and we had to get another company come in to do the signal work and do some outside design work, that's adding about $130,000 extra. So you're looking at $430,000 potentially for that. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you guys may have, and I think we're just looking for a recommendation to how you'd like to proceed.
If I may, Greg, can you go back to that slide right before that with the brown truck? Okay, so I see where you're saying where there's the two, you could call it an entrance and exit or two entrances. And you're saying that you'd have to eliminate one of those? Yeah,
to make this, because you can't have those two driveways like that because people will be going out in and out of both of them and it cause conflict if you put a signal in. So you'd have to eliminate one of those driveways and center it on the intersection to make it work appropriately.
Okay.
But that may cause a kind of redesign of that parking
It would,
area.
yes.
And
Yeah.
The owner's concerned about losing parking space.
I'm sure they probably would be, yeah. You'd also have to modify into that driveway a little bit because it's a pretty steep incline as you pull in there. So you would have to kind of regrade that whole parking lot or a portion of it, so that the, entering traffic, could enter, without having any issues or anything like that, so.
Any other questions?
Greg, thank you for this. What would be the determination, I guess, where you say if we can handle it internally, but if we can't handle it internally, here's what it would take?
Yeah, so if, just our signal crew, their schedule, I think we could probably do it in-house. But if we needed to go outside, then we'd have to pay a contractor to come in and do it. But I think we could probably get that done, with our crews in-house.
And as far as DOT, how much input do they want to have on this? How much do they want to make sure that the modifications fit? How much leeway do we have, I guess I'm asking?
They would have to approve everything.
Everything. So
Yeah,
there's no-
any kind of, the signal design would have to go to them for approval, so they'd have to approve everything, as far as us, making any, then they would have to do that with the Hawk signal as well. They have control, it's their facility, so we'd have to get it, and I don't think that'd be an issue, I don't think, getting approval from them. I think they would actually prefer to see the full signal, but I think we could, with some conversations we've had, if we make those modifications to Hillcrest Place, closing that off, the Hawk signal would work, and I think they would be more agreeable for that at that point.
I know we're still so early in the process. A couple questions. Do we know if this would be a complete street closure? And I imagine if it is, it goes faster, but would we think to do this as like just shutting down part of it while we work on it and keep parts of North Main operational where people can travel through?
Yeah, we would just do temporary closures when we needed to get out there and do the work. And we'd keep Main Street open for the most part, I think. Probably do a lot of in the evening, night work, things like that if we had to.
Okay. And just for clarity, I may have missed this. The red line that is running perpendicular to Main Street, right where Hillcrest Place is at, what is that red line?
Yeah, that's kind of giving you an idea of where we think the mast arms will be located, so what the mast arms that are the signal heads hang on. So that basically is your mast arm that comes across. We'd put potentially one foundation in that median there on Hillcrest Place to take care of both the north and south signal heads on Main Street. So that way you'd have probably 3 mast arms there. You probably take care of it with 3 instead of having potentially a 4 out there just to save on cost. And again, this is just a renderings. This is kind of what we were thinking in the office. Once we get into a more detailed design, it may not look exactly like that. The mast arms may change depending on, again, the driveway location and things like that. So,
Greg, the driveway location and the impact to Brown Truck while the construction and the grading is going on, any idea of where that parking is going to be located?
yeah, we would just have to work with the property owner and see what we could do as far as either talking to the other business owners in the area. I know that that parking lot gets used not only just by Brown Truck, Sweet Old Bills uses it quite a bit too. So that's going to be something we'd have to kind of work through and figure out how we're going to handle that.
That kind of segues into what I was going to kind of ask, because the impact on the alley, because I know the alley, and that's another, probably a good conversation for legal to come up with, to be part of now that we're going to be talking about any of this, because, the alley has always kind of been a little bit of problematic in that part of Johnson Street, homeowners own half and the city owns half, but I would think that, because people utilize that alley a lot for that parking, and while the street was closed, they could really utilize that more to help with the Brown Truck traffic. Are there any updates on, I know that there's lots of potholes and situations with the alley. Has there been any conversation about the alley in this?
I've not heard of any. I don't know if you've heard any. I don't know. I don't even. Yeah, we can look. I don't know if we maintain that or not. I don't know who maintains
I've
it.
had the conversation, so The city doesn't own the alley. The city has no rights to.
Well, I know, and that's.
And I know, I mean, I know what the business owners say sometimes, but the city of High Point has no rights
Well,
to
okay,
the alley.
well, let's ask legal, because I think that's the legal question.
Okay.
I've not looked into this, but I'm
Okay.
very happy to, and then to kind of give a confirmation, or if we find out anything different, I can report back. I've not in advance looked into the ownership of the alley. I would say that generally, I think most alleys like that are private alleys, but I'm happy to confirm that.
It seems like there's a debate between the people that live on Johnson Street and some of the businesses, and then the city using it for the trucks. So I know that Joanne's looked into it years ago. It's been a big, huge issue, but I was just wondering, like, if you considered that in this impact to help with the parking situation and utilizing the alley.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an option, but again, we'd have to figure out the ownership and what that entails. So,
Okay.
yeah, and kind of a maintenance responsibility and what happens with that moving forward, so.
And then I don't see anything on here about on-street parking. Is that something that y'all consider?
So that's being looked at as part of the larger study.
Okay.
Just to keep in mind, we did have some initial traffic numbers that were presented to us from that study, and they basically determined that about 15% of the traffic that's currently on Main Street actually goes through to the south end of town. Most of it is going to the hospital, the ballpark area, so that's where your traffic is going. So you're only going to pull about 15% off. So those traffic numbers and what we do out there as far as if we want to do on-street parking, they're going to provide recommendations, and then we'll make a decision from their recommendation what works best. But there is going to be some issues if you drop a lane, some queuing issues and things like that. But we can, once we get more information from the study, we can present that to you guys as well. So
To lean in a little bit on that, and to also, I think, follow up on what Councilwoman Peters is speaking about with the alley. At one point, I know one of the pain points being worked through for parking on Main Street was that because you have all these driveways off of Main Street that folks turn off to, and the question I think I recall being circulated at that time is, can you circumvent or mitigate that with some kind of back alley access way easier for those businesses? But I imagine, that's where digging into figuring out where this alley sort of conversation goes could at least be useful, because whether it's a long shot option or some kind of feasible option, at least knowing that allows us to see what cards we have, and then we can make, I think, a good measured decision from there. So
Yeah.
I imagine this alley sort of research and looking into that will also have an impact on the parking and the Main Street study.
yeah. And I just want to touch base on the Hawk signal again briefly. We did, if you close Hillcrest Place, you won't have to make modifications to the brown truck side. So if we can talk to DOT and kind of show them our preliminary plan of if we do close Hillcrest Place, can we put that signal in? Are they okay with that? That's definitely an option that we can investigate moving forward. And that does provide that red signal. So the way that works is you get a yellow signal. Once they hit the button, you get a yellow signal. Then you get a red light. And then once pedestrians have cleared, it flashes red, which means traffic can go. And it'll be a learning curve for the traveling public. But again, that's something that we can also look at as a potential option. So.
In terms of sequence here, I know this, and thank you for this drawing to kind of allow us just to spec and see some things early on. I know in terms of sequence, it sounds like you said there's some more internal sort of looking at this, putting this into something where we can kind of see it a little better. And then at that point, it's got to go back to DOT at some point to be reconsidered. I guess in terms of timeline for that, before we know, hey, we're good to pull the trigger on this and it's good to go, what do you think is that timeline there?
So I can get with DOT. They're pretty, usually pretty quick to get back to me on things like this. As far as if we can get an approval, I guess it just depends on if you want me to investigate the Hawk signal first. Is that the potential signal we want out there? I can talk to them about that. And then if for some reason they come back and say, we really don't, agree with that, then we can look at, and I can go ahead, I can send them both at the same time and say, this is option A and option B.
Yeah.
And then we can get comments on both. And then it's up to you guys on which way we want to go. So I don't think there'll be any issues with approving either one.
Yeah, I think sending two suggestions, getting that back is in the best interest of time. That gives us their opinion quickly. We're able to make a decision much faster than having to wait on them to come back
Right.
after, rejecting one offer.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I agree with that.
So if we moved the Hawk south down Main Street so that it's in the center of the block rather than at Hillcrest Place, would we still have to close Hillcrest Place?
It depends on where you want to move it, how far south, and what other driveways are in
100
there.
feet, so that it's not at Hillcrest Place.
Yeah, it would be,
Between Brown Truck and Sweet Old Village?
you have some more driveways there, so we'd have to just look and see how it would,
I know there are parking lots there, but
yeah, there's,
not public roads.
right, there are no streets through there. It's all just private driveways that would come out.
So halfway between
Yeah.
Hillcrest Place and,
Yeah, I think if you put it where the stopping traffic may be, south of Hillcrest, then that's potential. We could leave it open, but we'd have to look at it and see. And again, DOT would, want to make sure that they,
there's no way I would close Hillcrest. That's not, I don't want to, that wouldn't be,
No.
that
Is
wouldn't
that
be
a
on the
permanent?
table for me.
Were you recommending permanent closure on Hillcrest?
yes.
Oh,
DOT said that's the only way we could do it.
Oh, gosh.
There's no way I would consider that.
Did DOT recently say that? Like with.
That was there when
I've seen this plan.
we've sent this to them several times, and that was always is their concern, is that traffic coming out of Hillcrest. If you have a Hawk signal out there and traffic is stopped, people coming out of Hillcrest don't realize that they could potentially have a conflict with somebody in the crosswalk. So you usually don't put those at where you have an intersecting street like that.
Has that been recent? Because it seems like transportation is kind of changing a lot and has over the past several years where people are kind of seeing things differently. So has it been within the last 5 years?
No, I think that's always been, we've looked at this before, so I think that's always been their standard. Now, it depends on, with the folks we work with Division 7 and their safety group. Sometimes there may be things that get approved, but I think from a engineering perspective and a safety perspective, they would want that closed. And I think that would, anybody that you would ask, that's what they would want to happen there.
Can I ask, if we do the improvements, the 3 improvements that staff recommended up front, what's the timeline on that?
So the median would be a little bit longer. It'd take a little time, but the lighting, we just have to get electric out there. And it should be pretty, much quicker than, obviously, the installation of full signal. But that could happen, relatively quickly.
Would the median be affected by the full study? Like, if we do something now and the full study comes out and you come up with a different thought, I mean, I don't want to spend money on one thing and then the full study come out and then we tear up exactly what we did.
Right.
So would that kind of already be part of what you're kind of seeing?
It could be. I mean, depending on what's recommended from the study, if it's recommended that we do want to put parking out there and we can accommodate that, and narrowing it down to 3 lanes or even 2 lanes, then it would impact potentially if you did a median, depending on what the recommendation was. So it probably could work, but then depending on what's decided, that may have to come out in the future.
I think the best action for us to take is for you to ask DOT those questions, especially just moving. If we move it down further south, do we have to close Hillcrest? I don't think we want to do 9 to 10 months of work now with a study coming in, and maybe just changing the lights in that year interim before we can do implement the study.
Sure.
Might be the best thing. So maybe we can make that call next month.
Yeah.
At our next meeting.
Do that.
Yeah, if you bring that, is that good with everybody? Anything else?
And you take both the options to
Yes.
DOT and then
Yep.
let us know what they said
Sure.
next month?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah.
Good with everybody?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Our next item is an update on our metering.
Good morning.
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 Thank you, council members, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. Just want to take a few minutes and give an update on the city's AMI implementation and utility modernization project. I'll give a brief update about what we've done so far, what we're embarking on, and happy to answer any questions that we have. First off, what is AMI? I don't know that anybody knows what AMI is in a totality. It is a very big, complex information system. But in short, it is a set of multiple IT systems, both hardware and software, that are speaking to each other continuously. I like to think of this as a spider web of an invisible network making up of water meters, electric meters, and other components that are continuously talking to each other. And this will, in turn, allow our customers to understand their usage and their data, make smart decisions, and also will allow the utility to have more information so they can make better decisions and modernize their utility as our city expands and we grow into the future. The goal of AMI is to modernize the utilities, information systems, and capabilities and services, which include the ability to read electric meters and water meters, not only electronically, but continuously through the day. Very important, a customer engagement portal that will provide citizens the ability to see what their usage is and also provide a two-way communication tool between us and the city. We will have what we call a meter data management system, and I like to think of this as the brains of it. This will harness all the information and then populate that back out to the utility. And the integration of all these systems with our current legacy systems, because some of those will still be in place. What have we done so far? In 21 and in early 22, we awarded an RFP for our AMI system, and that's a little bit of a misnomer. There's AMI software and there's AMI in a totality, lots of different nomenclatures here. And we finalized that with Tantalus. In early 22, we then contracted with eSource. They are a project consultant, one of the largest in the country, to help utilities implement AMI because it's such a cumbersome task. They helped us develop a strategic plan for what we're fixing to embark on, work on creating our IT solution architectures, and begin designing our organizational change. Many things will change internally within the city as a result of this implementation. At the beginning of 22 and through the beginning of 23, we have began selecting the meter data management system, again, kind of the brains of the system, and a customer engagement portal, which will allow our customers to interact with us. This will not only provide information to our customers, but also create a new medium for that communication. Our work in progress. We've got contract deployment and negotiations are underway with our NDM and CEP. We are finalizing that hopefully in the very near future, and we intend to bring that to council for possible approval. We have a very small number of meters in our electric department right now, both water and electric, that we're testing, we're gathering data on so we can help provide this information to our IT partners so we can get the best product possible. We have already began on a staffing plan to develop what the city's going to look like in the future. Some jobs are going to change, some will be created. So far, the city has hired an AMI analyst. This person is going to oversee the AMI system, ensure that it's working properly, and make sure that all the information that go into our customers and our utility is accurate. Customer services also hired a new assistant director, LaDawn Pearson, sitting here with us today. With her experience in organizational change and other talents, between us and the great talent we have in customer service, we are going to convert customer service, both with AMI and other processes, to be modern and up to date. Our business process documents and architecture are being fine-tuned, and we'll be ready to deliver those to our RT partners once the contracts are signed. And again, we hope to bring those to council very soon. What's the future look like? Again, finalizing our contract negotiations, and then we will begin the integration of these IT systems. There are approximately 10 systems, including the cities, that will talk to each other continuously throughout the day. As you can imagine, 10 systems is not easy to all line up and talk to each other the same way. From there, we will go into our initial deployment area, and I'll show us where that is here in just a second. But we'll have approximately 400 electric meters and 500 water meters. And with our new IT implementations, we will set this area up to operate under AMI. The city will test all its functionalities to ensure that everything works properly. We've got everything that we've paid for. And from there, we will then move on to our full deployment, which I'll talk about in just a second. So for reference, where is the initial deployment area? I like to think of it as just north of Oak Hollow there. And from there, citywide deployment. Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm not oriented on where that map is.
Oh, no problem.
Skeet Club, okay.
Yes, kind of between Skeet Club and Oak Hollow there,
East
yes.
Chester's down on the right.
Yes,
right here.
yes, sir.
Okay, I see now where we are. Okay, thank you, I couldn't.
Yes, sir. And this area was designed, within this area, we have some of our water-only customers. As I'm sure all of you know, some of our customers have Duke Power, but this system still needs to work for our water-only customers. So we kind of had a mixed bag here that was chosen so we can ensure that everything works properly. Citywide deployment. Once the IDA has been properly tested by High Point and we can ensure the success of our hard work, we will then begin rolling out electric meters. As electric meters are deployed around the city, and this will most likely be done using a meter installation vendor, an outside contractor, those areas will then be switched over to AMI. The water meters talk to the electric meters, which in turn talk to some more infrastructure, and so we will phase and go across the city. That will probably take somewhere within a 12-month time span, and that will be dependent on, one, the meter installation vendor and their time, and then also supply chain issues. Both electric meters and water meters are still facing some of those challenges with supply chain issues as it regards computer chips. The computer chips in the electric meters, I heard, are more advanced than the ones they had in the rocket ship that went to the moon. So as you can imagine, they're hard to come by. Questions?
Do you mind going back to the timeline slide? I think it was the one where you were.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So roughly by 2026 at the end, by Q3 2026, this could have everything deployed. Where
I
it needs
think
to
that's a wonderful estimate, yes.
be. And like you said, it just depends on supply chain and some other things.
Correct, correct. And this is fairly common. Most cities and utilities I've talked to very often take several years to implement.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful effort. I think as we look at, urbanization and modernization of cities and streamlining processes and making things more efficient, not only for city operations, but also our end users in the community. I think this is a really notable effort considering, how cities are developing in smart cities and efficiency-wise. What's the major benefit impact that you guys expect, that staff expects to see from this modernization plan?
Great question. Multiple benefits depending on where you're at in the city. So I'll talk about customer service first. The portal, I think, is going to be huge. We get a lot of questions about folks' usage. They may not understand how it's being used. And not only does the portal provide a bunch of education, but you can look at your usage with an overlay of the weather map. Okay, this makes complete sense why my power was high this month because it was really cold. And you can compare yourself to others in the area. You can compare yourself to national averages. So it provides a lot of tools there. Water loss. This is a huge one. It will most likely be shocking when we find out how many people's homes actually have leaks. One of our neighboring utilities, Rock Hill, which is a very similar size, uses similar products to us. They, on average, have about 900 customers with a leak in their home continuously. And so, they'll communicate with customers, they'll fix several hundred, and then several hundred more pop up. And so we really hope to provide that proactive value. Most of these customers may not even know they have a leak, but we'll be able to see
You're talking about leaks to the infrastructure, not necessarily
leaks to homes.
right, leaks to, okay.
Yeah, leaks, yeah, great question. Leaks to people's personal homes, so that they'll know, hey, my water's actually been running, even ever so slowly, but a slow drip can use a huge amount of consumption. So we're going to not only help save our natural resources, but save our customers money. And save the utility money. Many utilities have seen a huge benefit because they've not had to do sewer adjustments. They're saving money, the customer's saving money, so it's been a win-win from that standpoint. Let's talk about the electric side of the house. This MDM that I mentioned is advanced, to say the least, and it is going to really open up the world for the electric department and provide them a ton of information, helping them decide what size transformers they need in certain areas, what impact EVs are having on this neighborhood, a lot of really fine-tuning engineering things that will help them better right-size our utility for today and the future. Outage management is another big piece. So currently, right now, as you may know, if we have a power outage, our customers contact us, we input that into the system, and we have an algorithm that helps the electric department determine where those outages are coming from. In the future, when the power goes out, Mr. Holmes' meter will alert us, he's out, et cetera, and so we'll probably know when the power's out before the customer will, which in turn allows us to much more quickly restore power, and that is one thing that this city does an excellent job of, especially for our commercial customers, that we keep them up and going, which in turn makes them money and makes the city money.
Thank you.
In terms of costs to the city, do you mind if we look at that information again, what our investment is in this? And
Sure, and I don't have that information in front of me, but I can kind of talk some rough numbers if that'll suffice. The AMI project, for that, the contract for Tantalus is approximately $12 million. So let me pause there, because that's a little bit of a misnomer. So our electric department does a wonderful job of, we replace meters every so many years to ensure their accuracy and ensure our utilities functioning properly. The majority of those dollars are actually the physical meter itself, because we'll have to replace all electric meters. And so while there is a large upfront cost on that, those electric meters would have been changed out regardless based upon their change-out program. The customer engagement portal, we're looking at approximately $100,000 on that. Some of our IT integrations, another $350,000, and the NDM approximately $400,000. Those are upfront costs, and then we will have residual costs annually to keep up the license on that software. And I know that, I'm sure, didn't get into the level of detail necessarily that you were looking for, but we're happy to go back and get some data and provide that to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, just knowing where that falls, I think first, let me say this. One, I love this project. I think everything you just said about efficiency, helping folks be able to make very good informed decisions about their homes, where they may have leaks, things of that nature, being able to see in real time the data that's comparative of their home with other areas, seeing sort of those downstream impacts of weather and how all of that plays together. I think once this is all up and going, people are going to love it. So I just want to start there and tell you that I think this is a project we do. I don't think it's a project we don't do.
Sure.
I think just the realistic sort of expectation here is the price tag causes consternation for people. However, I think we're going to do a great job, clearly, of framing the messaging here that, one, you just said there's all types of investments that we make on our infrastructure already, that some of that goes into that upfront, that you're not going to have to need to replace electric meters every year. This isn't something that happens like that. This is a sort of initial investment right now that has this sort of long-term return on investment that will save us some costs over time. I think being able to understand that, both as a governing body up here and also being able to have that message framed appropriately for the public when they hear it, can be really critical. I mean, there's all types, I think, all types of byproducts of this in terms of cost savings and cost efficiency when you start talking about even labor force, how we could either reduce or redirect where that labor force is used to offer other amenities or other sort of things that can allow us to be a value add back to our community. Just that kind of framing matters. I mean, it's clear that this project, I think for all the reasons you said and everything we're learning from other municipalities who have done it, is that this is a home run, and just how we understand upfront what that investment is. So that way it's got that long-term ROI, and how we frame that for our constituents is really important.
Couldn't agree more, and I'll also add, most all cities are either beginning down this path or have gone down this path. AMI, I like to think of AMI like I thought of cell phones. 15 years ago or 10 years ago, you could kind of decide whether you wanted to have a flip phone or a smartphone. Now that decision's been made for you. AMI is very similar to this scenario. The technology that we use now, the physical technology that we use now to read our meters, you can't even purchase anymore. We buy refurbished to keep us going. That's the only places you can buy them. So it's a lot of this older technology that folks are using now is starting to get phased out. And so not only I think is a huge benefit, I truly do. In another way, it's a little bit of a necessity.
Yeah, I was going to, make that point that, eventually, this decision will, it'll be a forced decision. I mean, simply because of the obsolescence and the advancement of technology.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that we're getting ahead of it, and I'm sure to a large degree, that upfront cost, we'll be able to absorb that and recoup that. I mean, I know with the hardware that you have to purchase up front, it's better to do that, when you can do that in large, lots or bulk, to be able to save on costs. So, thank you guys for this presentation.
No, thank you.
And to that point of being early on it too, being early is at the time of probably lowest demand.
Yes.
Because if you wait when it's the popular trend, it's higher
Absolutely.
demand, which means it's probably higher cost.
Yeah.
And this project has a markup of 25 to 50%. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know the numbers, but I just wouldn't be surprised if when this actually catches on, you got everybody and their mama trying to do it, that this can be really expensive.
It's true, and they're already seeing some price increases in the industry, overall, because it's even some of the smaller utilities we've talking to, they're starting to go down this route. There was an article in Florida not long ago where that utility was migrating over to AMI because they could not hire meter readers. They just simply, the workforce wasn't there. Yeah.
But if I can just.
Yes, ma'am.
It's kind of funny. So Monday night, I was watching the 11 o'clock news. And it's funny what you learn about council on the news and the newspaper. So all of a sudden, this guy said, yeah, council raises fees from $100 to $300 for meter tampering. He didn't say meter tampering was illegal. There's no mention, but council raises fees. So anyway, Pat, meter tampering is illegal, and so that's.
Yes.
Let me ask this question: will this AMI help reduce the?
I am so glad you asked that, and I feel neglect for not mentioning it. After I did that nice interview on tampering. Yes, it will. In fact, we'll know immediately, and so we will know as soon as a meter is removed from a socket. Is the moment that happens, we will know, and then we're going to know if it wasn't us, then it wasn't approved. And we hope to really increase our efforts, and it is illegal. The first offense is a Class 1 misdemeanor, and the second offense is a Class H felony, and I'm sure with the guidance of our good friend, Mr. Chief Reed, we can help march down that road. But yes, I'm very glad you brought that up. It will give us immediate information.
Okay, good.
He did. Oh, I said Chief Reed. I'm sorry, Chief Stroud. I apologize. Hey, I'm sure he's been called worse than that.
Anything else?
But just want to say, I think overall, what you are looking to do with customer service, I think just the sort of philosophy of how can we be, more accommodating, better user interface, things of that nature. It doesn't go unnoticed, and don't want to take it for granted what you all are doing to invest in doing that the right way. This is so important in our city, a city that I mean, we brand ourselves on what we do for our citizenry and for our residents. And so when customer service departments take big strides like this to not only balance efficiency, but also couple that with how you can be so accommodating and create more access, I think it's a home run. So got to say thank you to you and your team for that. Looking forward to what comes next with this, and looking forward to how this gets framed, because this is a home run for the city, quite frankly.
Well, thank you, and thank you for everyone's support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is on an update on our panhandling. I assume this Chief Reed.
Oh, it's
Chief Reed spokesman.
Yeah, the first one, that looks right there. The second one, yeah, okay, that'll work. Thank you. Yeah, you want to click on? Yeah, please. Thank you. All right, good morning.
Morning.
Give an update on our panhandling. Specifically, what we were tasked with doing is giving you an update on our existing laws that are in place, that are enforceable. And I also threw some other slides in here to show you where we stand on panhandling regarding calls for service and actually where we are in the city, and then give a little bit of a, my take on it as the chief of police from where we stand as a police department. So we have, in my opinion, or our opinion, I think we have 3 laws that are in place that actually are enforceable when it comes in the terms of panhandling. Now, there is no violation of the law called panhandling. That is technically not illegal, that act. There may be some things that go with what they're doing that make it illegal, which has to fall into another general statute or another city ordinance. It's much like people think there's a general statute for harassment. There's not. That doesn't exist. There's got to come in some other way. So panhandling is the same thing. The first one is General Statute 2175. I put the wording up there for you to read it. And pretty much this is, stopping traffic, impeding the flow of normal movement of traffic to ask for something, goods, services, whatever it may be. And I underlined the part right there because we think this is the most applicable law that we see for the folks that are standing in the medians. To put it into context, people standing in the medians or in the street in some capacity asking for money, whether it be a sign or verbal, whatever they're doing out there. We think this is the most applicable. This is the one I think has the most, I'm going to do air quotes on this, teeth to it, because it is North Carolina general statute instead of a city ordinance. But I did underline the part in there. I want to make sure I'm very, very clear on this, that the individual must impede the normal movement of traffic. So if traffic is flowing, them standing there is technically not illegal. They're going to have to some way stop the normal flow of traffic in there. So 2175 is an enforceable law. It is a misdemeanor in our state, so we could actually charge someone with that. 2 others that I pulled out, we have our city ordinance 10-1138, pedestrian soliciting rides, business or contributions. This is our own city ordinance. No person shall stand, sit, or walk in a roadway for the purpose of soliciting a ride, employment, business, or contributions from the occupant of any vehicle traveling in or upon a roadway, or stop momentarily in compliance with duly erected traffic control device or traffic sign located upon the highway. Sort of the same thing as along the lines of the general statute. This would apply to the folks standing in the medians and things like that. It does say stand, sit, or walk in a roadway. These little things in the law are very important, because if they are not standing, sitting, or walking in the roadway, we maybe will not establish probable cause to make this charge. So that's the other part that I underlined in that city ordinance. And the last one, our city ordinance on aggressive solicitation prohibited. This one, I actually like this one. I'm glad this was in place. This is a much more wide-ranging thing. This is designed for those aggressive actions that may not be in the roadway, but could be in some of your parking lots, your shopping centers, wherever it may be, where you have actively people coming up and I think these are robberies waiting to happen. That's my own terminology for it. But it's intimidation tactics, stuff like that, where you feel almost compelled to give money because you're scared. And that's exactly where we don't want our citizens to be in any capacity. But I'm glad this exists. But it does sort of apply to the panhandling sort of phenomenon that we're seeing. But in our city ordinance, it's listed out where these things occur and some things that have to go along with it. So it gives us enough where we have to observe these things happening to make probable cause for the charge. Now, a lot of times for me, I get peppered with, well, hey, why don't you do what Greensboro did? They send me a picture of this sign. I don't know how many times I've gotten pictures of this sign saying, why don't you guys do this and your problem's fixed? It's not quite that simple, folks. It's really not. They have a good ordinance. I mean, I've read through it. I have it here with me. It's long. That's why I didn't put it on the slide, because you go blind reading it. But it's a good, I think it's a good feel-good law is what it really comes down, because they have a problem just like we do. Maybe theirs is probably a little bit worse, I would guess, just because of the volume and how big their city is and stuff like that. They do some good things in there about defining what a traffic island is, and a median is noted in there. So that does give some parameters on medians where you can't stand in, has to be certain X amount wide and things like that. They define what impede means to traffic to actually violate the law. And they do have a permit process in place over there where you could get a permit and do these things. Now, how successful or unsuccessful that permit process is, I have no idea. I find it hard to believe that anybody follows the permit process whatsoever. But it does delineate it out there in their ordinance. I can't say if their ordinance is success or failure. They would have to tell you that based on their data. I couldn't begin to tell you, but I get this sign quite a bit. I have many, many, many pictures of it. Now, charging versus reality. This is the hard part. Everything that we just went over, they're all going to be lower level misdemeanors or infractions when it comes to the violations of the law in the grand scheme of criminal charges. Almost every single one of these that we just went over is going to require the officer to observe the violation taking place, to establish that probable cause. A citizen calling in and saying, hey, a guy walked out in traffic and impeded the flow, and then we get there 15 minutes later, we're not going to make a charge on that. We have got to physically observe that person impede the flow of traffic to make that general statute work, or even our city ordinance work. Now, the aggressive solicitation may be a little bit different, because we probably have victims that stay around who have been threatened in some capacity. We actually have someone we can talk to. I think we can build a case better on our aggressive solicitation city ordinance than anything else. But the reality is we're going to have a cop, a sworn officer, there to observe this activity before we could make a charge off of it. Simple calls in will not do it. Another reality is if we make a charge, and I'm emphasizing the if, it's going to be a cite and release, meaning we would give them a ticket, just like you were in a traffic violation. We will have very few, if any, custody arrest. I can't imagine us using that general statute, which is a misdemeanor, so we could make a custody arrest on it and take them down, process them, and take them in front of a magistrate, see if they get a bond, which they wouldn't. But we're going to be very few of those. It would take an officer off the street for, let's just go 45 minutes to an hour for this charge, where I just don't think anybody's going to go to jail for it. I'm really not looking to put anybody in jail for it. That's just not where I think our priorities need to be as a city with everything that we have going on. The last thing I put in there is the district attorney priority. I will not speak for the DA or their office. I don't tell, hey, I don't think they'll charge this. I won't do that. That's their job. They'll make that decision. If we put a case in front of them, they can make the decision. Do we want to take this to prosecution or not? But I can state this. With everything that is going on in the criminal justice system from top to bottom, I imagine they prioritize things just like we do as a police department. And I can imagine that impeding the flow of traffic is not going to rank very high with everything that they have going on. And they may think it's the coup de grace. I have no idea. That's their decision, not mine. From us as a police department, where do we stand on this? I have to remove my personal side of this. I don't like it. I think it's a bad look for the city. I think it drives other crimes to happen at the end of the day. I mean, you're talking about a cash business, folks. When it comes down to it, wads of cash floating out there. These people can just be as easily victims as anybody else. That's why I say it's a robbery waiting to happen. And plus, I don't like the way some of the tactics that are used to gain money. I think it is an intimidation. People are scared. I mean, that's not where we want our public to be. That's why we got into this job, so you don't have to do that mess. But here's where we stand in a calls for service overall as a city. And I was able to pull out the last couple of years. In a panhandling call for service, I had to go back to 2019. That's when we actually put a call class in for panhandling. 2019, it became such a problem that we said we need to start tracking this. Before we couldn't track it. we were having to guess, is this a panhandling call or what? So now we have a panhandling call in as of 2020, and you can see the numbers that we've gotten through the years. 2020, 312 calls, 248, 314, 117. Those percentages over there are the percentage of our overall calls for service that we get in a year. So in 2020, you can see we answered 312 panhandling calls, but we had over 113,000 calls for service inside the city. So in the grand scheme, every year is going to be minuscule to what we're dealing with the calls for service. Now, some of those could be a little misconstrued because we may get there and reclassify it. If we do get there and make contact with someone, and let's say we run them and they have a warrant, we're going to reclassify it as warrant service. Panhandling is now off the board. Okay. So there could be a little more, a little deviation in there, so the numbers could be a little bit higher, but it's not going to be that much. So in your overall calls for service, I mean, you can see where we're sitting at right now in 2023, 60,843. That's much higher than that now. That was a week and something ago when I pulled those stats. They end every Sunday, and we already had this thing done by last week. So we're getting in 402 calls a day. As you can see, that 60,000 number, if everything pushes through, we're not even halfway through the year, we're going to smash, which is a lot. I say smash, it looks like several thousand. That's a lot of calls for service that we're going to get this year that we didn't get last year. Now, my disclaimer on that, I like to make sure I point this out, is a lot of those uptick in calls for service is because our officers are going out there and getting after it. We're making a very aggressive approach on several things, especially on the traffic side, trying to tamp those things down. All those would go in as calls for service too. So we are bumping up the numbers ourselves to an extent, but we are getting quite a few calls for service that are really pushing us to the limits on a capacity side for what we can handle. Just example, yesterday was an extremely busy day. The radio was just nonstop, looking at the screen. We just couldn't catch up at all. We got 431 calls for service yesterday, just in a 24-hour period. That's a lot, trying to hit those things. So my point is, we're going to have a hard time with the panhandling calls, putting in a priority perspective on how we want to deal with it. It's almost like we're paying bills here, folks, as a police department. We got to figure out this amount of money is what we got. We want to make sure we pay the mortgage. We want to make sure we pay our utility bill, our water bill, and stuff like that. And then we got to figure out if we got enough money for, let's say, like our Netflix at the end of the month. You know, I probably wouldn't put Netflix first. I probably would. I want to get my mortgage out of the way first. That's what we're doing as a police department. We're trying to prioritize. Here's what we want to get to first. These other things are just going to have to wait, or we'll get them when we get to them. I do think that our staffing plays a role. It's as simple as that. Even if we were fully staffed, folks, I don't think this would still be a priority for us. We would get it when we can, but it's definitely not helping us right now. We're 37 down as of today. We've lost 5 in the last month for various reasons, whether resignations or retirements. We're going to lose. I know we're going to lose 3 more between now and July 1, and then the rest of the year, I'm not sure what we're going to get. I can tell you, I know 4 people will leave by the end of the year, and that's just known exits. So the unknowns are what really get you. So our numbers are dwindling. We're getting people in the door, but it just takes so long to get people out, and we still can't keep up enough to offset the ones who are leaving. So our numbers aren't getting any better, and that's hurting us when it comes to answering calls for service. Take panhandling out. There's plenty of things I think we need to concentrate on as a city. We just don't have the bodies to do it. So that is the brass tacks of it. Yes, I think it's a problem to an extent, because a lot of different factors in there, but in the grand scheme of things, this is not the over. People just don't like it. That's what it rolls down. It's a bad look. People don't like it, and I get it, and I agree with them. So I do want to put this up there. You know, these are our stats as of last Monday, not this Monday, but last Monday. And I want to make sure I'm pointing out down there that negative 1% you see, the total impact crimes that we're down right now. That's to hit that at the start of June. That's awesome. But we've been chopping away at this. That's January 1. We were up 26% at the start of the year. Just out of the gate, it was crazy out of the gate. We've been chopping away at it. We got it to -1. That could be plus 26 tomorrow if everything goes haywire. I have no idea. But from a priority perspective, those things that you see on the right side of your page, those impact crimes, the violent crimes and the property crimes, where we try to concentrate our efforts along with the traffic stuff inside the city. So our officers are doing, what that tells me is our officers are doing exactly what we want them to do. And the livability part and the making it safe, that's what we're trying to concentrate on first. So that's important. We're doing something right. We're just not able to get everything. And I don't know how long we'll be able to hold on with the staffing like we are. I mean, calls for service are just, like I said, through the roof. I guess it's the premium on calling the police nowadays. So what to do about this, though? Because I don't think it's a problem that we should ignore, just because I'm telling you, hey, we can't, I don't think we're going to be able to enforce it. I think there are other mechanisms that are in place that we could probably start doing as a city to help us offset this or mitigate it in some kind of fashion. There's all kinds of resources out there. We are not reinventing the wheel, folks. There are cities after cities after cities who have dealt with these problems. I mean, that guide to regulating panhandling over there on the city in the red, 41-page document that I've read. And there's some good stuff in there, but they also give you the realities and the legalities of this. A lot of people stand up and say, this is a freedom of speech issue, folks. You just can't nix it. And some parts of that I agree with, some I don't. But there are some mechanisms that are in place that I think we could replicate to try to make things better, but it's going to be a team effort. I can assure you the police department's only going to get so far by themselves. I mean, I think we would have the help, but we're going to have to do a consolidated effort to get these things going. I know Hickory's had a big problem. They've had some success with it, things like that. But it's going to have to be a sustained effort, too. Whatever we put in place, it's not going to be a short whim, let's hit it, and then it goes away, because this is a problem. It's supply versus demand. You know, if we could get people to really stop giving money at the intersections, this would not be a problem anymore, I don't think. I mean, at least in our intersections. They move to other places, which we would have to deal with, but it wouldn't be in the middle of our roadways. So some of the things that we've toyed with, we have a social media campaign. I think the public needs to know the truth of panhandling. Where's your money actually going? What are these folks doing? You know, some folks, I mean, we talked before with several things. They could be committing fraud out there. That's a felony. We're not looking to charge felonies on this. I don't think we'd see the time of day in court on that. But the truth is, a lot of this money that you see for these folks, I'm not even say homeless. That's not even the right term, I don't think, to use, is not going where you think it is. I think a lot of these folks, they figured out this is a cash cow. That's the Travis Stroud opinion. I think if you go up and talk to some of these folks and you see some of the wads of cash they're holding, this is an everyday thing. This is a cash cow. They have figured out this is a ATM, a free ATM at the intersections. So if we can inform the public the truth about panhandling, some of the groups that you see sitting out there are complete frauds. The religious institutes and things like that, absolute frauds. Identify and expose fraudulent organizations such as that. You know, Charlotte had a big one. They were here in our town, and we ended up running them out. We pretty much put our foot down on that one because they were passing out flyers that we could figure out were fake, and we sort of tamped that one down pretty quick. Those were a lot easier to do, though, than individuals. I do think we have plenty of credible and worthwhile charities, places that you can give money that will be beneficial to the people who need it most. That's where we need to convince our folks, the giving people, this is where we want your money to go. But we got to tell them, hey, here's all your options, and here's a way to get the money to them in a convenient fashion. I think we need to list out there in the social media complaint list of employers who are actively seeking to hire new personnel. I mean, I bet if we took our biggest panhandling spot inside the city, whatever intersection it may be, and we drew a circle around a radius and went and talked to the business who's hiring, I bet people would be hiring. So your choice is to stand there in the median and solicit for money or go get the job. What are we doing? We're soliciting in the median because it's bigger money. So it's a supply versus demand thing, you know, but you have to, what we're having to overcome is the heartfelt feeling of giving that couple of bucks to this person that I've done something really good. And maybe you do. I don't know. I can't, there's so many, I can't tell you where the money's going every single time. I put down at the bottom the permit system. A lot of these panhandling plans that we pulled up in the last thing do involve a permit system. I don't know who's going to run that. I don't know how to enforce it. Would anybody go get a permit? I doubt it. And then how would we track those things? That's a piece of the puzzle. But I do think there's some things we can do as a city to help mitigate this. We're not going to get it out of the way altogether. But that's the reality of where we stand right now on the panhandling side. Now, I will tell you, I've told our folks, I have become frustrated. I'll not lie. I've told our people, if you have probable cause, well, I don't think we're going to charge our way out of this problem. A lot of times law enforcement, we think we can just arrest everybody and it'll be gone. And it doesn't work like that. But I've become frustrated as a chief of police and living in this city and things like that. I don't like the look. I've told our people, if you have probable cause, charge it. Don't worry about what happens in court. At least we have done our job as a police department. I want all of our charges to be effective. I'm looking for a result, meaning stop the action that you were doing that is detrimental to you, us, our city, and creating victims, and we don't do it again. And I don't think us charging people is going to do that, but I've told our people to charge. I think that was my last one, yes. Any questions for me?
Yeah, Chief Stroud, thank you Thank you and your department for your service, and I understand the constraints that you guys are under when it comes to manpower, and so just so everyone is clear, in terms of enforceability and the efficacy of signage and stuff like that, you don't see that there's going to be much of a return on launching some citywide campaign of signs, and you don't have the ability as a department to enforce stricter ordinances currently.
Yes, I think that's an accurate statement.
Okay.
It's unfortunate. I hate to say that. It makes me feel bad, but
Yeah, so I think in terms of, our kind of our direction here, I think, just the public wants to know that there is, some type of, oversight on this, that we do have, eyes on it, and that we do have some type of potential structure that we could move ahead with. And your recommendation, if we were to do something today, what do you think you would implement today that would give the public at least some idea of movement towards solving this problem? What would be your number one recommendation to move forward today?
I would start with the social media side of it. Now, with that, are you going to catch everybody? We have, 117,000 people in the city. We're not going to get all of them. And then we have a lot of people in and out of the city all day long. But I do think informing people, if you don't know, this is kind of like a crazy state we use all the time, you don't know what you don't know. But if you tell people the truth and they actually listen and they're like, oh, well, I thought that these people really were down and out. And maybe some of them are, but here's a better way to do it. I would do the social media campaign first. That's where I would start. I would give that some time to sort of kick in. I would also it's still a violation of the law, though. And that's what I do, is violations of the law. We have toyed around the idea with running some special projects where we do pro-enforcement stuff. We would have to pull it as an overtime event and pull people out of other duties and things like that. But we go down around and we actually do observe violations, and we do cite people for it to let them know we are serious. On the backside of this, we're not going to ignore it. We will. Now, whatever happens in court happens in court. But I think we've done our job at this point in time. And the word would spread on that too, that, hey, they're charging people for this now. We're not just running them off. What happens now when we pull out there, we get the call and we don't see them violating the law, we maybe run them off to the best of our ability. But as soon as we go to the other 430 calls, guess what they do? Come right back. So we have toyed with the idea on the enforcement side after, but I would like to get a little bit of leeway in giving, hey, here's what you can do. Here's some resources that these folks are available to. Maybe some of them take advantage of. Maybe they don't know what resources are out there. Right. And then we go for this, much like our tethering law on the dogs. For almost, I don't remember, 6 months or a year, we gave people warnings. Don't tether your dog. It's going to be a violation of the law. To give people a chance to build fences, cages, stuff like that, give them housing. So now, we sort of gave them we told you. You get your fair chance. After that year, we started charging on the tethering law. I would like it to be like this. Give them a chance to see some mitigating efforts, non-enforcement side, but I think we could pepper the enforcement in there every so often.
So in terms of the education portion, where do your officers have something that they could pass out in terms of what resources are available, shelters, times, anything like that? Is that something that you currently have or your officers are trained to do? Or is that something that you think would be easily created, maybe a one-page sheet or something like that, where we could, phone numbers, addresses of things like that, we could hand out, that your officer could pass out to individuals that you come in contact with?
I think it's a good idea. Readily available? No, but I do think a lot of our officers are in tune, so they can give that information individually. It'd be much better if it was consolidated, it was uniform. We're about procedure and process here. That's what we do as law enforcement. So I'd rather be the same card to the same person. We do it for domestic violence.
Sure.
Our guys have a script that they give on DV calls with the resources for the DV victims that they can go do. So it's not like this would be unprecedented for us to do it. When we get these calls, we want to do our part. I don't want to say this is somebody else's job. No, I think it is partially a police department job, and we would have no problem doing that. At least it would give our officers something that they could do. Because I think right now they feel a little bit defeated when they go out there. They're like, really, what am I doing here, man? Maybe if we do that, we get something out of it, or they get something out of it.
I think, there's two sides to this coin, and I think, in terms of, you as law enforcement and protecting our citizens, I think we also have to make sure that even though there may be a percentage of these individuals who may not be on the up and up when it comes to what they're doing, I think we can't, just dismiss the idea
agree.
that there are people in distress. And so I want to make sure that we, take a very compassionate approach to this, because their safety is important as well. And so I think getting them to the resources that they need, making sure that, folks who may be in distress, facing mental health, any potential drug addiction situations, I think it protects our citizens, our officers, and I think it also protects that population. And, I want to make sure that we keep that in mind as we go forward. I don't want this just to be a hammer trying to stamp out a population of folks who may be in distress. I want this, because our city is compassionate, is kind, and I want us to make sure that we keep that in mind as we deal with a very difficult problem. But thank you for your efforts and everything that your officers are doing.
Thank you, appreciate it. Anything else?
I love that. I love that. I mean, I'd love for us to go ahead and sign on to it, be a city that it's okay to say no to panhandling. I think that, I was just Googling it, and I see and I love what Michael was just saying, excuse me, Councilmember Holmes. But like this, so Arlington, they did, and they partnered with some of the city nonprofits, and then there's actually some signs that say, so that it's okay to say no, but then there's some that say contribute to the solution. So if you want to give money, you feel sorry for the people, just like you were saying. Yeah, I love that. I mean, so is that something that we could, the social media campaign would be basically free because we already have a social media page. I guess identifying the areas that need the signage the most, purchasing the signage, so would this be something that we could, Chairman Hudson, is this something that we could ask staff to go ahead and get implemented? Or
at least research and facts.
And I probably sold the social media thing short, meaning just like the social media, but that's why I put that slide in there. On my research, I did the same thing, and I found the signs, and I was like, well, that's a good idea. At least it's about knowledge and getting that stuff out there. So I think it's bigger than just the social media campaign that we would need to do, but that is definitely a piece of it. That's why that's in there.
And I think I don't know if internally if you guys could create that card, or if there's one of our agencies that could help create that card that you could pass out to make sure that it's really a quick resource guide for folks on to be able to find where they need. So I think if we could, that's something that's probably quickly and easy to turn around.
I don't think that part's that hard, especially
Okay.
with our community side, with all the connections they have.
Great.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. You didn't want to have Danny Wilson speak in a minute about resources. Great.
Good morning.
Morning.
I think you all pretty much already kind of touched on what I was going to talk about as far as the resources. And even though we say that panhandling, it's not necessarily a homelessness issue, but I don't think that we can look at them separately. Certainly not all panhandlers are homeless, we know that. But when we look at the resources, we're still pulling on many of the same agencies. And so for the panhandlers, of course, that are homeless, what we look at, of course, is them entering that continuum of care system, the 24-hour, 7 days a week hotline. We call it a hotline, but that coordinated entry line is really their first. That's the way that they enter. That is the entry point into the system and receiving services. So when we look at the various services, you're looking at primarily three components: housing, then the actual supportive services or human services, and then, of course, job skills. And I know, Councilman Holmes, you mentioned something as far as maybe like for the emergency shelters and things like that. Right now, I'm not here to talk about homelessness, but I think we do understand that we simply do not have enough beds. So even if we gave them the information and they get it and they're entered into the system, we simply don't have enough beds. And so when we talk about emergency shelter, some of them still are not operating at 100% capacity since COVID, simply because even though now the CDC says that they can, HUD says that they can, some do not have the capacity. They still don't have the staff, and they don't have the means to continue to ramp back up and operate at 100%. So we are still down emergency shelter beds in our community. The other thing that I think we may need to be aware of too is that some communities are looking at homeless individuals providing some proof of residency. That is something that is kind of on the horizon here, and I know that our neighboring city is potentially looking at something along those lines. So if someone from High Point were to present at an agency in Greensboro, I'm not really sure how that would work out if they have to provide some proof of residency. So that's something that I know that I've discussed with our staff, and we're just trying to, really think about, okay, what's something that we can do to sort of be on the lookout and just be ready for those types of things.
Nina, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So, I guess I'm kind of missing the proof of residency understanding, like someone who's unhoused, like what proof of residency would they be able to provide? Like, what exactly is that?
Even though people are homeless, they typically have an address where they are getting some mail. So it could be the address where they're receiving mail. That could be at a High Point agency, could be at a Greensboro agency, but specifically what that proof is going to be has not been identified or outlined. It has not been established. Again, it's something that I believe a consulting firm has sort of been giving them some information on.
So the thought is that they could be either refused services or redirected
Right.
back to the city of residence?
Yes, for the simple fact that what they're looking at is cities want to be sure that the resources that have been allocated for their area, for their community, that those resources are going to their residents. If we look at like HUD resources, the Emergency Solutions Grant, they want to make sure that if these are funds being allocated to their specific city, that those resources are going to residents of that city and that community. So that's the idea behind it. Also want to say, I mentioned here rapid rehousing, and of course, rapid rehousing is one of the mechanisms that you use to really prevent homelessness. That's one of those safety nets that if they're behind a couple months on rent or something like that, then they can actually get assistance in paying rent, whether it be utilities or those types of things. But the agency, one of the agencies within our community, because of some capacity issues, did not reapply for funding. So that was a little bit over, I believe, $100,000 that is not in our community now for rapid rehousing. So capacity, when we talk about our nonprofits and our agencies, capacity is a big deal. Again, and then we have, of course, the Housing Authority. They have Legacy Ridge that they're building right now, of course, and then other affordable housing service providers. We don't have very many. We only have really one for-profit developer that has been interested in building multifamily housing. And I won't say interested, we have had some others, but only one that's been successful in getting projects approved and things like that. So we do have, I would say on a very small scale, when we look at affordable housing rental units coming online, we're only getting roughly anywhere from 60 to 72 a year. And that definitely is not going to meet the number that we need within the community. And of course, our service providers, when we're looking at the mental health department, or just other healthcare agencies, transportation, education, the school system is very much at the table when we talk about homeless children and homeless families. So they are definitely at the table with resources as far as the school is concerned. But of course, that's also possibly someone getting their GED through GTCC. So just different things like that. And food insecurity. Also on Tuesday mornings, I'm not sure, you probably were aware that at the High Point Public Library, they do the community cafe, and there are service providers and resources provided at that community cafe. Now, when we look at job skills training,
I'm sorry, on the service side, how is the interfaith community, are they involved in any of these solutions? Do any of the churches that provide any temporary housing or services?
Not that I'm aware of. If they're doing it, it's on an individual basis. There is no interfaith network or anything like that. I know that we have talked with the ministerial councils and things like that to get feedback. And a lot of times when people call our office, if it's something that we can't assist them with, we will say, reach out to, maybe your church or a church in the community for assistance. But
Yeah.
there's nothing as far as a coordinated network of that.
Yeah, I know I just had some conversations with Turner's Chapel, AME, in North High Point, and they had expressed probably some interest of affordable housing construction. And so I didn't know if that was a conversation that any of the other churches or houses of faith in this community had engaged you on.
Yes, and I did get a referral this week. I got an email, and a lady did reach out. I don't think it's the same church,
Right.
but they wanted to do something when it came to affordable housing. So they are reaching out. I will just say, like the previous community I was in, they did have an interfaith network, and I think there was one here in High Point years ago, but that has sort of disbanded. But yes, we certainly, any churches that are interested, we would certainly be willing to work with them in any capacity that we can. And I know many churches too support some of our agencies too, our nonprofit agencies. So they are helping in that sense.
And I think that's what that interfaith turned into, is rather than 5 churches try to have homeless shelters, they all said, well, we already have a very effective one. Let's
Yes.
all contribute to that. I found that was more effective.
Right. And so as far as job skills training, this is where I really believe that if we talk about panhandlers who are not necessarily homeless, that if they've chosen panhandling as a means of making money or getting extra money, they may receive Social Security and it's not enough. So they are trying to supplement the income that they do have within their household. So as far as programs that we have been involved in, job skills training programs through GTCC, our construction training programs, as well as welfare reform liaison project, they provide funding for job skills training. So there's not necessarily, I would say, any specific agency or anyone that has just said, okay, I'm going to focus on this population for job skills training. But what I'll say about resources is that the resources, they're there, the agencies are there, the individuals simply have to be willing to reach out to the agencies to get assistance versus choosing, like the chief said, you have a job here and you have the choice of panhandling or taking a job, you might choose the panhandling. So the resources are there. One of the things that we've been talking about through code enforcement is when we look at these homeless tents and the communities and lots and things like that, we have been talking about the signage and how we can actually we initially thought about a package or just a list of resources and things like that, but papers can be hard to keep up with. So what we've actually discussed is maybe some type of QR code in addition to having that QR code on the sign. Even homeless individuals, everybody for the most part, they have a smartphone and they can, zero in on that QR code. That could also be used for contributing. If we were to make signs, you could also have a QR code that would link to whether it be United Way, some agency, some means of individuals being able to contribute just through that QR code. I know that we're doing a lot when it comes to surveys and various things now through QR codes. So that's something that we're considering and looking at putting on the signage that we're using on the individual lots. So it may be something that could be used for this particular initiative as well. Any questions? And the day center, I'm sorry, and like I said, I know we weren't here really to discuss homelessness, but just to kind of give you an update there, the day center, of course, they're in negotiations right now for a particular site, but I do believe that the day center, once that is online, that will definitely be a huge resource for the community as far as individuals, whether they're homeless or not. That will be a huge resource for the community and a place that they can go to seek assistance.
Yeah, and I know in terms of workforce, I know the county, we have, the Mobile Career Center So we may be able to actually get that to the population in the communities. And so if they don't have the opportunity to get to our workforce center, we can get that mobile unit a few times a month to be able to set it up in communities and get them access to job applications and things of that nature. So, we just have to be creative and think of, all the different options that we have to solve problems. But thank you for all your efforts. Appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Anything else on the agenda? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you all.